Bob Katter was on Sky News a bit earlier today, and I thought it was pretty obvious about, look, we know where the actual power lies, that being in the parliament, but we also know where a lot of the social change happens in this country, often for the worse, and it's in the boardroom as they try to out-woke each other rather than out-profit each other. Remember, these people fought harder for two blokes to get married than a tax cut being offered by the government. Here's Bob Katter.
Look, the CEOs now are running Australia. They run the government, they run everything. They are interfering in all sorts of questions, like moral questions and economic questions. They're running the country. This has got to stop. And also, I think a lot of them are very naughty boys.
Can I just...
Rita, let's start with you. Are they too far out in front, the CEOs, about thinking that rather than just simply profit and loss, maybe doing a bit of charity along the way, making sure that we feel slightly less guilty about making money because, we'll give to this cause and that cause. But frankly, every boardroom is almost too woke for its own good now, isn't it?
Well, yes, they've been completely captured by identity politics and elements of the left, and that's how they see being a good corporate citizen, is to adopt all these measures and all these political stands that have got absolutely nothing to do with their running of the business. And in fact, you could argue in a lot of cases it's to the detriment of running of their business. It can alienate staff members, stakeholders, and certainly potential customers and clients. So, but we're seeing it, and I think this is what happens when Conservatives don't fight the culture wars. The left just wins, and that their march through the institutions didn't stop at universities and public institutions. They're now in private institutions, and you're seeing the full impact. So, and it's not just the political stands they take, but it's the advocacy work that they also do behind the scenes. They have a huge influence.
And Corey, let's be honest, this in part is the great power of the left, is that they've been able to infect almost all areas of society. I joke about this, but I'd love to have a theoretical royal commission into working out when we lost the plot as a country, when we started to veer off away from common sense and basic principles. I'd love to see that at one point in time, but on the other hand, I would like it to be privately funded, not publicly funded. As a bloke who's fought those culture wars, how do you feel about what Rita just said and what Bob said a bit earlier?
First off, Bob Katter nailed that. I heard that interview live, and that was the cut-through line. And it made me think, these are the people who have the money, who the political parties principally depend on, who are bullied in their own way by lefty activists on Twitter and in social media and other causes. And so they want to be approved around the dinner party and the corporate circuit. So they cave into all these demands. How else can you have, BHP, who fly around the world, they're execs in private jets and dig up coal and do all this, saying, they want to be climate change advocates. You can go on and on and on. You see Qantas, who would do a deal with the repressive regimes in the Middle East, demanding gay rights and the sacking of Israel Folau. You can go on through this whole hypocrisy, but unfortunately they've got the coin, they have the means to prosecute the argument, and they're weak enough to get bullied out of supporting any conservative cause by a very vocal, tiny rump who are determined to change this country for the worse.
And Mark Latham, an example of how this works, and you've taken your feet on Parliament about this, is the power of the sponsor's dollar affecting what a sport does. And again, Jack de Belin, a rugby league player who was before the courts on a completely separate matter, not entering into any of that, but he is also going to court because he's trying to fight the NRL, standing him down while he is still innocent until proven guilty. Now, a lot of people have these discussions about whether players should or shouldn't be able to play on if something like criminal charges was in front of them, or a civil proceeding or something like that. But what the NRL has pushed back about, part of its justification for bouncing Jack de Belin out of the game, was Telstra. Telstra is the chief sponsor of the National Rugby League. The entire premiership is named after them. And as was written today, as became clear, was that after news of the summer from hell and de Belin's sexual assault allegations broke, the NRL said one of its major sponsors, Telstra, raised serious concerns about its brand being ruined by the governing body not cracking down on players behaving badly. Now, I get it. when you sponsor and therefore become a major revenue stream, you should be able to say, look, we have an opinion here, but too often we end up seeing that the governing bodies turn around and say, oh, OK then, sponsor says this, we do that.
Well, yes, you know, more fool us. We used to think that these companies were sponsoring sporting codes for advertising reasons, but in fact they were running them through the back door. They were controlling them. And the example of Telstra, a lot of these facts about the de Bellin case were flushed out in the original court judgment in the federal court by Justice Melissa Perry a couple of months ago. And the most striking is not about Telstra, it's about the Newcastle-based health fund NIB, run by Mark Fitzgibbon, the brother of Joel. And Mark Fitzgibbon sent a message to Todd Greenberg, ostensibly running the NRL, to say it's outrageous that Jack de Bellin is in the Daily Telegraph today photographed in his State of Origin jumper with NIB on his chest there, and we're against that, and you've got to stand this bloke down because our company logo is associated with him in the newspaper. Now, at this point, a strong, purposeful sports manager would have said, well, hang on, Mark Fitzgibbon, I run the code, you're a sponsor, we appreciate your financial support, but you don't give orders about the standing down of a player, Jack de Bellin, because you're a sponsor. And it could have also been pointed out to Mark Fitzgibbon, you've got a conflict of interest. You're a past board member of the Newcastle Knights, a rival club to the Dragons, where de Bellin was a player, and his son, Lachlan Fitzgibbon, is a current player for the Knights. So a very, very clear conflict of interest, where you can't be a sponsor ringing up to say, stand down the best player from the Dragons, a rival club. When my son plays for the Knights, I sponsor the Knights, I miss the Knights, and I've been a past board member of the Newcastle Knights. Now, did Todd Greenberg say any of that? No. Part of the problem here, it's not just that these CEOs are way out of control and they think there's no limit to their powers, their control, their genius and their moral virtue, but they're dealing with weak sports managers and administrators who don't stand up and say the obvious about a conflict of interest, and that the people who should be running the code, of course, are the administrators in consultation with those who matter, the players and the fans, not the sponsors. So the weakness of sports administration has been dreadful in the NRL, the AFL, the rugby union, and on it goes.
Yeah, I can't help but think that the number one sporting winter code in New South Wales and Queensland is hardly going to go without a sponsor. That's an awful lot of people to market yourself to, rather than, as I say, be the tail that wags the dog.